The Guardian is reporting on a really, really interesting story about the prisoners at Guantanamo Bay. Now, it's a commonly held belief among people across the political spectrum, really, that the people that are there have been thoroughly vetted and they're all guilty and we know they're terrorists. But it turns out that that's absolutely false. So let me give you some information here. They say, quote, only 3 of the 116 remaining detainees being held at Guantanamo Bay were captured by U.S. forces. Nearly 100 were originally captured by Pakistani and Afghan forces and handed over to the U.S. So Human Rights Watch senior counsel Laura Pitter says the following: there is great reason to disbelieve claims that detainees at Guantanamo are the worst of the worst, including the fact that many were sold to the U.S. for a bounty, not based on any real quality intelligence the U.S. had gathered. Now they go on to say the following: the foundations of the guilt of the remaining 113 involves a degree of faith in the Pakistani and Afghan spies and warlords who initially captured 98 of the remaining Guantanamo population. Sweet Jesus. Okay. So does everybody understand what they just laid out here? They're saying, you fools, when they captured everybody and brought them to Guantanamo, it wasn't like we were out there in the battlefield and we're like, ahoy, there they are, it's Al-Qaeda, go capture them and then we'll lock them up. No, that's not the way it works. We don't live in a fucking Liam Neeson movie. What happened is, the Bush administration and Dick Cheney, all of them, they cut a deal with the Pakistani government and the Afghan government. And they said, all right, we were just attacked on 9/11. We're rightly very angry about that. You guys need to send us people who are terrorists or affiliated with terrorists, and we're going to lock them up in this place, Guantanamo Bay, and we're going to do what we do. So what did these governments do? Now, I don't know whether or not Cheney and Bush really trusted them. They might have been dumb enough to actually trust those governments. But what the Pakistani government did, what the Afghan government did, and what the warlords that we were doing business with did, is they said, how much are you going to pay me for this, bro? And they were like, you know, whatever the dollar figure was, I don't know the exact amount. But they were like, okay, you got it. So what did they do? And oftentimes they just went out and rounded up anti-Pakistani government protesters. And they rounded up anti-Afghan government protesters, people who were just enemies of the different regimes or the different warlords. And they would ship them to Gitmo and say, yeah, here's your Al-Qaeda. That's adorable that you believe me. Yeah, you can lock them up at Torstein, whatever. We don't care, bro. Where's my money? See, this is the way that international politics really works. This is the way that foreign policy has been functioning under inept, incompetent administrations. And this is why we have a process, a due process, and habeas corpus to begin with. This is why we have the Constitution. This is why we have international law, to avoid situations like this. See, people think like, oh my God, it's just the PC liberals who want to give terrorists a trial, and the problem is that they're softies and they don't care about being tough on crime and tough on terrorism and stuff like that. Nothing can be further from the truth. We just understand that the reason why the system is in place is so that we don't become the barbarians and we don't become the savages and the terrorists ourselves by acting in ways like this, where we lock up innocent people, where we don't have any evidence that somebody's guilty of something, but we end up fucking torturing them and in some instances killing them. The CIA torture report, it was, what, 25% of the people that we tortured, we admitted at this point were innocent? Isn't that incredible? They're saying, yeah, we know that 25% of them were innocent. So what the fuck are you not telling me? And let's be clear, there's parts of that report and there's other reports that have not been released because the information in those, they say, well, that's even worse. There are pictures that also have not been released because they go, well, this is going to help aid recruiting terrorists. No, the actions themselves, that's what helped aid recruit terrorists. Releasing the pictures once you did it, that's not debatable because we live in a democracy. We're supposed to have transparency, and the taxpayers, people like me, I want to know what the fuck I'm paying for. So I can tell you to stop it if you're doing something wrong, if you're doing something illegal or immoral or unethical or unconstitutional. And that's exactly what happened here. Guys, I don't think people really understand how big of a deal this is. I mean, there's a reason why. According to a recent Gallup poll, and there were various different polling organizations that asked similar questions that all found the same thing. There's a reason why people around the world said, by wide margins, the U.S. is the #1 threat to peace internationally. They didn't pick any other state. Now, granted, it was limited to states in there. If you included ISIS, maybe it would have been a different score. In fact, it probably would have been. But when you compare the U.S. to, for example, Pakistan, you know, the Taliban is pretty common there. There's a lot of them there, and it's a nuclear-armed state. The U.S. ranks way more dangerous in the eyes of the world. When you compare the U.S. to Russia, I mean, Vladimir Putin just fucking annexed Crimea. He said, man, he just took it. But the world goes, yeah, no, I think the U.S. is still more dangerous. Why do they think that? Either they're all crazy and, you know, there's no substance behind what they're saying, or people in the U.S. are missing something, or we're glossing over our own crimes. And that's the answer. The answer is, outside of the context of the U.S., people go, oh, you're the guys that waged an offensive war against a country that didn't fucking attack you in Iraq. You're the guys that said, okay, we need to go get Osama bin Laden and we need to go get Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan. And then you went in there, you did that immediately, and then you fucking stayed there. Why are you staying there? They look at us and they see other motivations to our actions. They see the military-industrial complex. They see the fact that Afghanistan has endless mineral wealth and opium, by the way, and it's been proven we guarded the fields there. They see that oil production in Iraq shot through the roof after we invaded there, and by the way, we stayed there. They see that there are windfalls, there are profits to doing what we're doing. Now, I'm not saying that's the only reason why we do what we do. Of course not. There are rationalizations and there are ideas of being the world policeman and the moral leader, and I think some leaders genuinely believe that. But along with doing that, they also say, well, to the victor go the spoils, right? I can make my buddies rich with all these defense contractors. I can give them no-bid contracts. We can take some natural resources from around the world. And then you blink, and next thing you know, you have 900 military bases everywhere in over 100 different countries. 57% of your discretionary budget is spent on war. And you have all these deep systemic problems, and it gets to a point where you're just blind to your own crimes. And that's the point we're at right now, man. We took people who weren't terrorists, locked them up at Gitmo. It was extrajudicial. We tortured them. And then we go to the rest of the world, and we're going to teach you about freedom and democracy and about abiding by human rights. Fucking spare me, dude. There's a great quote by Noam Chomsky. He says, if the U.S. is so concerned about stopping international terrorism and violations of human rights, there's an easy way to do that. Stop participating in it. Yes, other countries have massive problems, and other groups have massive problems, and they all need to take care of their shit. They do, no doubt about it. But we are responsible for what we do. And when we have a government that locks up innocent people, no evidence whatsoever they're guilty or they're terrorists, they hold them there, they torture them, and then we still haven't released them even though we know they're innocent. This is a fucking moral outrage, and everybody in America should be fighting against this. We should be fighting to end this, and we should change our actions completely so that the rest of the world recognizes that we're not as bad as our worst actors. Because right now, it's not an irrational thing for people in other countries to think when they look at what we're doing and what they're doing with our money.